Good morning. I'm Wendy Sechrist, the Executive Director of the Idaho Workforce Development Council.
Good morning. I'm Rod Grammer, President and CEO of Idaho Business for Education.
Welcome to our 5th Annual Governor's Conference on the Age of Agility, the Future of Work. Through the years, we've heard from the governor and top thought leaders and practitioners. Additionally, we've engaged with thousands of Idaho's employers, education, and policy leaders, discussing how Idaho will continue to thrive in this time where rapid economic growth has led to workforce shortages across industries. In turn, those shortages are resulting in significant changes to education delivery methods. We're excited to be here once again, bringing you invigorating speakers and highlighting Idaho programs that help Idahoans develop skills for the careers that are right for them. We continue the theme of agility for this conference. We know the last few years have proven that Idaho is not only agile, but also durable. Today, we have a number of distinctive speakers who will not only inspire us, but will encourage each of us to continue our journey forward in this workforce ecosystem, creating a place for Idahoans to grow, live, and thrive.
Our Age of Agility event today gives us the awareness and presents the perspectives from Idahoans who have grown up here and know what it means to call Idaho home, helping us focus on what the future holds as we prepare for tomorrow. Today, through the work of our partner, Idaho Public TV, we can host the Age of Agility Conference right here in their studios in Boise.
Before we begin, we'd like to thank Governor Brad Little for his continued support of this summit and our partner, Idaho Public Television. We'd also be remiss if we didn't thank many of our key workforce development partners in state government. IDEAL, Idaho's College Savings Plan, the Idaho State Board of Education, the Idaho Department of Labor, the Idaho Department of Commerce, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, Idaho Career Technical Education, the State Department of Education, the Department of Corrections, and the Idaho STEM Action Center and Department of Health and Welfare. We all work closely to align our efforts to ensure that Idahoans are prepared for the careers that meet our employers' needs.
Today, we are so pleased and grateful to have several guests to discuss growing up here in rural Idaho, describe their collaborations that exist between education, industry, and government, as well as learning about generational diversity. We will be joined throughout the day with guest speakers and 2 different panels. We will gather again for the purpose of discovering how education and business can be more agile to accomplish our shared goal of setting our students up for success in school, work, and life. Throughout this event, we will be monitoring questions and do our very, very best to answer your questions, as many of them as we can, through the chat function. Our theme for this Future of Work event is agility. As a state, we have proven that we are both agile and resilient. We have shown strength working together to develop Idaho into a place where Idahoans are thriving. Today, we have 2 panels that will focus on collaborations between industry, education, and government that will bring people together in the world of work and the possibilities for the future. Our agenda today will be using a running format, which means that we will not have exact times. When one presenter finishes, the next one will come up. So once again, thank you for joining us for the 5th Annual Age of Agility Conference.
It's now my pleasure to welcome my boss, the Governor of Idaho, Brad Little. Governor Little continues to be a strong champion of education and workforce development and has demonstrated his commitment by putting millions of dollars into creating partnerships between businesses and education, promoting apprenticeships, and investing in education at all levels so that Idahoans can improve their skills, their earning power, and the lives of their families. Thank you for continuing to lead efforts for this worthy cause, Governor, and we're honored to hear from you today.
Well, thank you, Wendy and Rod, and I appreciate all the partners that you named who bring us this conference every year, especially the Workforce Development Council and Idaho Business for Education, Idaho Public Television, and the others. I've spoken in past about the need to intentionally share our future as a state. The input from all of you about how to continue evolving and innovating to meet the changing needs of employers and our citizens is so important, so thank you for joining today. It's no secret, Idaho is on a tremendous trajectory. We have one of the strongest economies in the nation and one of the most solvent state budgets. We continually rank at the top of lists for job growth, economic momentum, and good government. Our success comes with both opportunities and challenges, and I'm so grateful for the people and businesses of Idaho for their relentless efforts to make our state even stronger. My goal from the beginning is to make Idaho a place where we all can have the opportunity to thrive and where our children and grandchildren choose to stay, and for the ones who left to choose to return. A strong education system from K to career forms the foundation of a strong state. The success of our young starts in the home, but we all know a good quality teacher in the classroom is one of the determining factors of a student's success at school. I am proud that we have increased state funding support for education 67% since I took office, bringing starting teacher pay up from the bottom 10 nationally to the top 10, and we increased salaries and take-home pay for teachers across the board, including our most experienced educators. You can expect me to continue making education the priority throughout my time as governor, not just because our Constitution requires us to invest in public schools, but because we have a moral responsibility to do so as well. What we're doing to strengthen public schools, including our investments in literacy, is turning our students into lifelong learners and helping us stay competitive as a state. Idaho has a strong track record in innovation, and we're doing more and more to help our students acquire the skills and knowledge they need to thrive as they approach adulthood and into adulthood. Our approach to innovation was born out of necessity. 60% of today's workers are employed in occupation that didn't exist fewer than 50 years ago. The job market is constantly changing, and we have to remain agile in responding to the change. That's why this conference is fittingly named the Age of Agility, because as employers, policymakers, and education leaders, we have to continually evolve to stay competitive. This is especially important as more U.S. jobs are exposed to some degree of automation. The changing market will force us to be creative in our approach to workforce development, and we must keep up or we'll be left behind. Which leads me to our most significant accomplishment in workforce training in Idaho, our Idaho Launch Program. Every graduating senior, starting with the class of 2024, will have access to funding to acquire the skills necessary for an in-demand career. The innovative part is that it funds post-secondary education at all levels. Other states have funded community college for all. Others provide scholarships for traditional bachelor's program. Idaho Launch is going to fund whatever level of training is required for our youth to access in-demand careers. If that's a 6-week program to become a commercial truck driver, we support it. If it's an apprenticeship program to become an electrician or teacher or a cybersecurity specialist, we support it. If it's a degree program to become a manufacturing technician or a software engineer, we will support it through Launch. High school isn't enough. Everyone needs something post-secondary to access good jobs, but it doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all approach. Launch is a game changer that will keep our businesses and employers competitive and create opportunity and prosperity for our citizens. I'm so grateful to the many people participating and listening today and for your support of Launch, and I'm extremely excited to see how it will improve the lives of our communities. The better we align employers and education, the more opportunity we create for our younger generation to stay here and to raise their families. Thank you for your time today, and I'm confident the great line of speakers and panels for this conference will help us all walk away with a better understanding of how to remain agile, innovative in the years ahead.
you for your remarks this morning. We have a few minutes for questions and answers. So I'd like to begin by asking you about Idaho Launch. As you said, it really is a game changer because we know that financial reasons is one of the big stumbling blocks for kids going on to post-secondary. How did you come up with this idea, and why did you decide this was the program you wanted to advance?
Well, Rod, a lot of it is listening to the businesses all over the state. Last summer, when we had our special session to put money into in-demand careers, we identified $80 million for in-demand careers going forward, and we knew that this was what we wanted to do. But after the special session in September, we worked through the fall with the Workforce Development Council, with our legislative partners, with the education stakeholders on what do we need to do to basically be a game changer, because whether it's a plumber or a truck driver or a cybersecurity expert, they're all kind of a different set of standards. And so this is a way to where we could address all of those needs. And the Workforce Development Council will say, what is an in-demand career? And we're hopeful that it is fully subscribed and it just drives success for our young people.
I'm sure as you travel the state, as I travel the state, talking to employers, it's hard to find any company that says, hey, we've got all our jobs full. So economists say we're in this structural labor shortage. What else can the state do, in your view, to help us address this critical labor shortage?
Well, partner with those companies. They're going to have to, in the healthcare field, our hospitals are going to have to help us with teaching personnel for nurses and physicians' assistants. In the business field, the businesses are going to have to provide whatever technical their support, and in some instances, equipment. This is a big deal. We're going to have to scale up, whether it's a community college, whether it's career technical college, and to scale up to fulfill those needs, we're going to have partnership with businesses, and the students are going to have skin in the game also.
We're also going to have two major expansions here in Idaho. $15 billion for Micron, INL over in eastern Idaho is expanding. So this is going to make workforce development even more critical, isn't it?
But actually, if you look at the statistics, I agree with you, they're two big ones. But small businesses and medium-sized businesses they will tell you the same thing that Micron and INL will tell you. The skilled workforce is the only brake they have on continued success. We have to have the people. And we put a lot of money in the last couple sessions into infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, and broadband. Now we got to skill up with that most important capital of all, and that's human capital.
What role do you think IBE and the Workforce Development Council, we have stood up and are operating a youth apprenticeship program. What role do you think youth apprenticeships will play in this?
Well, and apprenticeship programs are popular all over the country, and it's all a matter of the old days where you and I got our bachelor's degree is not, and in fact, you and I with our bachelor's degree have to do more to stay continually skilled up. But apprenticeships really address the fact that almost every single job in Idaho just requires a higher skill level than it did 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a nice segue, because I was actually going to ask you about lifelong learning. You mentioned it. So how can we create a culture in Idaho of lifelong learning, and how can the state prepare for that?
Well, obviously our huge expansion of broadband, because so much, learning, continuous education is going to be tied to good quality, affordable internet access. So we're doing an enormous amount of that. And of course, I've got that located over at the Department of Commerce, because having access to broadband is what's going to help the rural communities. It's going to help everybody to be continually learning. But you still got to have warm bodies. It's a combination of internet capacity and somebody that's a skilled teacher to help people, whether it's advanced manufacturing, even the traditional plumbing, HVAC, electrician. Those jobs are changing rapidly too, and they have to continue to reskill.
Do you think there are things our universities and community colleges can do to kind of retool to address this continuing learning that we're going to have moving forward in our culture?
Well, the state board, that's their job, is to create chemistry between whether it's the community colleges or our four-year institutions to address those big high priority. And a little over a year ago, they sat down and said, what are our three most in-demand careers? And number one was healthcare, actually by quite a ways. And the second ones are cybersecurity and advanced manufacturing, particularly in the electronics area. So that's kind of the template. But Idaho is a very diverse state, and the needs in the modern wood processing industry in the far north part of the state is way different than the needs for technicians at the lab in Bonneville County.
Yeah. You mentioned artificial intelligence. How do you think the state can respond to both the challenges and the opportunities of artificial intelligence? How do you think it's going to change both the workforce and education itself?
I know it's going to change it.
Yeah.
And I've actually recently read and observed a lot about it, but you just have to, everybody has to continually be skilled up. And whether it's in the healthcare field, which is really going to be important because we have a real shortage of healthcare workers in Idaho, and artificial intelligence is going to help us get them skilled up. But it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be ubiquitous.
So you mentioned that, and you rightfully so pointed out all the accomplishments since you took office a few years ago. But you also mentioned we need to keep investing in education. What are the unfinished business, so to speak, in education in terms of the investments, policies the state can make in that area?
Well, my number one fundamental is you can't do any of these other things if kids aren't reading proficiently by the end of the third grade. And when I say that, I mean all kids. Because if there's some children in a classroom that are behind, they basically slow the progress of all the other students clear through their career, and then they slow the progress of the workforce for being adaptive. So literacy is going to continue. We're making great progress on literacy. Obviously, COVID slowed it down a little bit, but that is the state board's priority. That is Superintendent Critchfield's priority. We absolutely have to get over literacy, and then all the STEM fields that have to be addressed. But we want our kids to be prepared for modern society, and it looks different in different parts of the state.
So you mentioned this in your State of the State last January, and you mentioned it again today, that we have a constitutional obligation for public schools, but also a moral obligation. I think we all understand the constitutional mandate that the legislature has. Can you explain a little bit more why you think it's also a moral obligation?
Well, our constitutional republic requires participation, and our founders of this country recognized that participation was significantly dampened or did not happen if you didn't have an educated electorate, people that were making those decisions. So they understand the system, so they participate in the system. And in this global competitive economy we have, we know that for us to compete with the world, we're going to have to continue to elevate the educational attainment level of our citizens. And so it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for their families. It's the right thing to do for their communities. But we also have to be agile in how that adapts to individual students in individual areas.
Yeah, speaking of agility, you also mentioned in your opening remarks about innovation. How can we create an innovation culture or mindset in Idaho? What are the factors that you think are important in fostering that kind of environment?
Well, kids today have some challenges that obviously you're my generation and even the generations before and after that didn't have. So when I think about helping them do that, I look to the classroom teacher because they'll recognize what kind of innovation they need to do to kind of help dampen the negative effects of social media, all those other things out there. And so I really rely on the classroom teacher and the local school board to say, here's the challenges we have. We've got to figure out a way to, you've got to engage those kids in learning. It's not only lifelong learning, but it's a love of lifelong learning, and nobody does that better than a really good classroom teacher.
When you go out, you travel the state, you meet with a lot of educators, and I know you go into a lot of schools. What are you telling them when you go into a school? What kind of advice do you have for the students of today?
Well, the first thing I try and do is listen. I have quite a few of them come into the office, but week before last, I was in both Mackay and Challis and took questions from, and then the week before that, I was in Malad and took questions from those students, and I was incredibly impressed. A, about how knowledgeable they were, and B, about how sincere their questions were. Real good questions. Not that the media would ever miss out on a question, but those high school kids, I was very impressed with how they were engaging, how they wanted to. I was in Mackay, and they're teaching those kids how to work in a fish farm, and they have a fish farm in Mackay. Most people don't realize that. And those kids were learning skills in high school to where they could walk out of high school. They'll have to have some continuing education and go to work for one of the largest fish farms in the world, right there in Mackay, and it's in Mackay and Buell both. But I was impressed about how the school district was helping those kids get those schools. In Mackay, I don't know if I can say this or not.
Go ahead.
The kids are doing the maintenance on the buses.
Wow.
They're learning those practical skills while they're there at Mackay. I was just incredibly impressed. But I was impressed about how throughout the student body they were asking good questions. They were obviously interested about their future, but it's a testament to the local community, their parents, how those kids were motivated to go forward, and gave me great hope in the future of Idaho.
Well, Governor, I think we're out of time. I think you've got to go on to your next session today. But we really appreciate you coming and opening our conference today on the Age of Agility. As always, it's a pleasure to see you and to hear from you. So
Thanks,
thank you
Rod.
very much.